A year after the engagement, Mick Hardy deliberately lost the game and gave me to his uncle Robert Hardy. I asked to cancel the engagement in public, but he thought I was angry. That night, after drinking, I couldn't stop hooking Sven's scum man. In the depths of his affection, he pushed me to the floor-to-ceiling window. Hilda Melville, marry me, I'll solve your problem. Later, I heard that the arrogant Mick Hardy was punished for kneeling in front of Robert Hardy's ancestral hall all night for robbing his uncle's wedding. Just after class, Mick Hardy sent a car to pick me up. He said that he lost the game, and that only I could save the game. I know that girl. He raised a canary, and I'm his fiancé. Seeing me, Mick Hardy smiled playfully. Hilda Melville, my uncle is back. That's when I realized that there was a man sitting across from Mick Hardy. The man was dressed in a black suit, and his facial features were cold and handsome. He wears a string of Buddhist beads on his wrist. He sat on the sofa with his long legs folded, and the aura around him was terrifying. After a quick glance, my heart pounded. It is Robert Hardy, the ruler of the Robert Hardy family, the first wealthy family in the capital, and the most powerful cold Buddha in the entire capital. Hilda Melville, I played a game with my uncle. I was unlucky. I lost. The bet is you. You stay with him tonight, and I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Mick Hardy's rambling voice pulled my thoughts back, and I stared at him incredulously. Mick Hardy, I'm your fiancé. How can you give me to someone else as a bet? Mick Hardy took Kelly Hodgson into his arms and sneered. What fiancé? Hilda Melville, do you recognize yourself? You're just my marriage right now. Mick Hardy was right. I was really just his marriage partner. Half a year ago, something happened to my company. The people of the capital are deliberately alienated. It was Mick Hardy who insisted on marrying the Melville family, despite his parents' objections and protecting me. We've known each other for 10 years. I thought he would be my eternal salvation. But when I fantasized that I would enter the palace of marriage with him, he secretly adopted a girl who would please him more than me. Today, he even made a bet on me. Every word of Mick Hardy seemed to shoot at the tip of my heart. The unprecedented sense of anger and humiliation crushed my heart, and the pain was so bad that I couldn't breathe. Seeing that I didn't speak, Mick Hardy raised his hand to brush Kelly Hodgson's hair, and hummed and reminded me, Hilda Melville, your family is about to go bankrupt, and if you can't even accompany someone now, how will you gain a foothold in the capital in the future? It's all acquaintances, and my uncle won't do anything to you. You can have a meal with him, or watch a movie. I smiled faintly. Don't worry, I really won't accompany someone, but I will accompany your uncle. I will be happy. Starting today, we are officially rescinding our marriage, and we wish you and Kelly Hodgson a long life. Robert Hardy, who was sitting on the couch, suddenly got up, gave me a thoughtful look, and then walked out of the restaurant. I turned to leave, but Mick Hardy stopped me in a cold voice. Hilda Melville, what kind of gambling trick are you playing? I'm just asking you to accompany someone. Is it necessary to cancel the marriage? Of course it is. I laughed. It's about to be sold, and if you don't leave, do you want to keep it for people to talk about after dinner? After heading out, I saw Robert Hardy. He was answering the phone, his face cold. The thin and long figure exudes the aura of a gloomy owl under the cold-toned light, making people dare not take a second look. Hello Hilda Melville, I'm Bergmond, Robert Hardy's assistant to the general manager, and it's raining and it's cold, so he asked you to get in the car first. Of course, if you don't want to, I'll have you sent back to Melville's house now. A warm male voice came from behind me, and I clenched the corners of my skirt a little helplessly. Today's Melville family is no longer the Melville home of the past. Without the marriage of the Robert Hardy family, the Melville family's financial chain would have been broken. If my dad had known that I had taken the initiative to cancel my engagement to Mick Hardy, he would have been angry with a heart attack. Until he got to Rolls-Royce, Mick Hardy didn't chase him out. The feeling of grievance came flooding over me, and I couldn't help but shrink my fist. Bergmond, go to the Tenio Manor. A cold voice rang out with the sound of the door opening. After Robert Hardy sat down, I quietly moved a few centimeters to the side. Hilda Melville, I haven't seen you for 4 years. Are you still so afraid of me? There was no emotion in Robert Hardy's eyes, and my tight strings snapped. Some regretted getting into his car. The Melville family and the Robert Hardy family are world friends. When my grandfather was alive, He would often take me to Robert Hardy's old house. I've heard people talk about Robert Hardy, who lost his mother at a young age and has a paranoid personality, and that it's best to stay away when he sees him. So every time I see Robert Hardy, I walk around. When I was in my junior year of high school, Robert Hardy had just graduated from college. He went abroad to study and explore the market, and he went for 4 years. The silence in the car was suddenly broken by a strange phone call. As soon as I connected, I heard Mick Hardy and his brother laughing across the street. I want to see if the famous cold Buddha in the capital will be pulled off the altar by a woman. It's a bit of a shame though. I haven't tasted Hilda Melville yet. My heart was crumbling. In Mick Hardy's voice, I don't hear a trace of guilt about losing the game. More of a banter. Someone smiled and asked him, Mick Hardy, if your uncle really slept with Hilda Melville, would you still marry her? Mick Hardy's voice was tinged with irritation. I've heard the people in my family talk about Robert Hardy never having a girlfriend, either gay or not in that area. Didn't he wear Buddha beads to remind himself to abstain? Hilda Melville doesn't take the initiative. He will never touch her. And if Hilda Melville really tries to seduce him, I don't want such a woman. Robert Hardy paused for a moment playing with the beads, and when I looked up, I bumped into a pair of dark, cold eyes. Little Uncle, I was stared at and hung up the phone. Mick Hardy was really rude. This is in front of the elders. Even to say that people can't do that. Mick Hardy wouldn't be bored to call me. It must have been Kelly Hodgson on purpose. Uncle, Robert Hardy's thin lips curled slightly, and he looked at me. Don't shout. I'm Mick Hardy's uncle, not yours. I'm sorry, Mr. Robert Hardy. Robert Hardy furrowed his eyebrows, obviously not pleased with my title, but I can't think of anything else to call him except Mr. Robert Hardy. Had to change the subject? Mr. Robert Hardy, what are you taking me to your private estate? What do you think? Robert Hardy raised his hand to lower the baffle in the car, and his voice was mixed with a faint smile. Looking at the suddenly closed space, I stiffened, not knowing how to answer this question. Such gambling is actually very common in the Beijing circle. Asking that sentence, in Robert Hardy's eyes, it seemed that I was trying to get away with it, but the thought of Mick Hardy taking me as a bet made my nose a little sore. Get in my car. Do you regret it? I looked up and met Robert Hardy's deep, cold eyes. No, no, it's rumored that you're not close to women. But before I could finish speaking, my chin was lifted without saying anything. Robert Hardy's facial features enlarged in front of me, and a burning kiss fell abruptly onto my lips. My eyes widened in shock. It was only when I was almost out of breath that Robert Hardy let go of me. After a while, he whispered, look less at false reports. I swallowed my saliva and steadied my mind for a few seconds before carefully reminding him, Mr. Robert Hardy, I'm your nephew, Mick Hardy's marriage partner. Robert Hardy's eyebrows were lightly suppressed, and his tone was lukewarm. Hilda Melville, your grandfather saved my grandfather's life back then, and they made an agreement that if one party had trouble in the future, it could be solved through marriage. There are more unmarried men in Robert Hardy's family, not just Mick Hardy. What does Robert Hardy mean by that? He is a well-known Buddha in the Beijing circle. Do you want to marry my Melville family? I heard my grandfather mention it, but I didn't take it to heart. Moments later, the car came to a halt in front of Robert Hardy's private estate. Someone came up and opened the door. Robert Hardy's warm palm suddenly grabbed my waist and lifted me out of the car. I saw that the employees in both rows were all stunned. That's right, the uncle is holding the nephew's marriage partner. Who is not surprised to see it? When I got to the master bedroom on the 4th floor, Robert Hardy took off his blazer, revealing his structured arms, and then gave me a faint look. There's ginger soup on the table. You drink it while it's hot. I'll take a shower. The cold Buddha still cares about people. Looking at his long back, I couldn't guess what was going on in his mind. After drinking the ginger soup, the servant closed the door with a plate. After hearing the sound of the water running in the bathroom become quieter, I became a little timid. I followed Robert Hardy to his estate, because Mick Hardy lost me to him. But I didn't agree to be Mick Hardy's bet at all. Is it too late to run away now? The phone rang suddenly, and Mick Hardy's call came. I didn't want to answer, but the call was like a rush. Hilda Melville, you're so well behaved. You blush when you kiss me. I guess you're not going to betray me, right? Hearing Mick Hardy's rambling laughter, I was annoyed. Mick Hardy, We've canceled the marriage. Even if I'm in love with your uncle now, you can't care about it." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a moment, and his tone was cold. "Hilda Melville, I didn't agree to cancel the engagement." I was so angry that I hung up the phone. Sick, distraught, I looked around and saw a bottle of wine on the table, so I picked it up and took a few sips. Halfway through the drink, my brain was a little dizzy, and I immediately put down the bottle. There is a black grand piano in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. On the music stand is a handwritten sheet music. I don't have a name, and I haven't heard of it. I removed the stool and sat down, and watched the score play. The tune is lyrical in A minor, just bouncing and bouncing. I felt my body getting hotter and hotter. Some indescribable feelings are tickling in my heart, making people itch unbearably. The brain was groggy and even ran to Robert Hardy's bed. "I don't know, Hilda Melville. Why are you so hot?" A worried voice came from my ears. I felt my body being pulled into a cold embrace. I couldn't help but get close and rub it. Robert Hardy stiffened and immediately dialed a phone call. "Robert Hardy, let me fly back from abroad. Drunk. What are you so worried about? I'm usually very drunk, and I haven't seen you care." "Hang up. Just let her get a good night's sleep." The voice on the other end of the phone sounded familiar, like the doctor brother I was close to. Up in the air. "I'll hear it again." I staggered to my feet, and was about to approach the phone when my head was pinned into Robert Hardy's arms. He hung up the phone and asked me gently, "Hilda Melville, it's hard, isn't it? I'll take you to the hospital now." Hospital. The most annoying thing in my life is going to the hospital. I don't know where I got the courage, so I dragged Robert Hardy to the bed. "Robert Hardy, I'm not going to the hospital. Just get some sleep." "Hilda Melville, you come down first." Robert Hardy's breathing disorder. Seeing that his pinna was turning red, I suddenly came to the mind of teasing him. A Buddha in the Beijing circle. "Robert Hardy, I want to sleep with you." Do you want to sleep with me?" Wine strengthens people's courage. And it is true. I felt like a cone on the beach, and I was so hot that I started babbling. A hint of helplessness crossed Robert Hardy's dark eyes. Soon, our positions were reversed. He lowered his head to my ear and dropped two words that made me feel soft. Robert Hardy ripped off his black shirt. My gaze snapped over his 8-pack abs. I couldn't hold back and swallowed my saliva. The abdominal muscles are lumpy and distinct. Very beautiful. Sure enough, the name of the Buddha in the Beijing circle is not in vain. Next to the pillow, Robert Hardy's phone rang at an inopportune time. "It shows Mick Hardy." Robert Hardy glanced at it. His expression faded, and he picked it up. "Uncle, I heard that you took Hilda Melville to your private estate." Mick Hardy's tone was hurried, and before Robert Hardy could reply, he spoke again. "I'm not playing the game anymore. The billion-dollar project in the East Side will be returned to you, and you will ask Bergman to send her back to me." Robert Hardy curled the corners of his lips slightly, and finally took off his disguise. "Mick Hardy, do you think I seem to lack those billion?" As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed me on the lips. I couldn't help but snort. Robert Hardy moved his phone away, his voice muffled. "Hang up. Don't bother me with my business." "Robert Hardy, you're crazy. Hilda Melville is mine. Aren't you afraid of being damned by heaven when you rob your nephew's fiancée?" Robert Hardy didn't respond and hung up, but my dizzy brain was awakened by Mick Hardy's thunderous voice. "Hilda Melville, do you want to continue?" "Hey." I looked at Robert Hardy with wide eyes. There was a gentle smile in his eyes. This appearance is completely different from the unattainable Buddha in the Beijing circle on weekdays. But there's no denying that Robert Hardy's low, hoarse voice is demagogic. I frantically tugged at the drawstring on his gray pajama pants. Robert Hardy looked down and bit my lower lip. He kissed with restraint, but I felt a little tormented, and I couldn't help but pull his body closer. When I woke up the next day, I heard the sound of water running in the bathroom. It should be Robert Hardy in the shower. I looked around, and all that came to mind was some restrictive plot. I vaguely remember Robert Hardy saying something to me in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. "Hilda Melville, marry me, I'll solve your problem." A low, sexy voice that echoed in my ears for a long time. Until now, I was a little dazed because of what happened last night. It's really ridiculous. It wasn't long before Robert Hardy came out of the bathroom. I looked up, my eyes fell to his shoulder, and my face quickly burned when I saw a shallow tooth mark there. Robert Hardy had someone bring me a new dress, and it fit perfectly, as if it were tailor-made. After breakfast, he took me to Beijing University. Hilda Melville, what I said last night, think about it. Robert Hardy looked down at me, and I pondered for a moment before I said, yes, okay, I'll take care of the rest. Robert Hardy's eyebrows were slightly raised, and he seemed to be in a good mood. I don't really understand why he married me. After all, it could cause family conflicts in Robert Hardy's family. But I do need a partner to marry right now. Robert Hardy was the obvious choice. Hilda Melville, does it still hurt? It's an ointment. I already applied it to you once last night, and if you still feel pain, you can apply a little more when you get to the dorm. I saw Robert Hardy suddenly pull out a pink ointment from his trouser bag. I was so ashamed that I wanted to find a crack in the ground to get into. What's going on with Robert Hardy? A Buddha in the Beijing circle. He did what he did. Say what to do. I squirmed for a long time before whispering, no, it doesn't hurt. Sorry. No experience the first time. I choose to be silent. After sending me to Kyoto, Robert Hardy went to the company. I'm going to have a graduation defense next Monday, and it's a bit of a lot in the past 2 days. As soon as I arrived at the entrance of the college, I saw Mick Hardy, who seemed to be waiting here. Hilda Melville, why are you blocking my WeChat and phone calls? I've already made a clear relationship with Kelly Hodgson, and I won't be in touch with her in the future. Can you take it back if you said yesterday to cancel the marriage? Someone said they saw you and Robert Hardy at the school gate, and he sent you here early in the morning. Was it true that you guys last night? Did something really happen? Seeing Mick Hardy's face a little haggard, I chuckled. What happened to me with him? Does it have anything to do with you? Mick Hardy seemed to have suffered a big blow, and suddenly pulled me into his arms. Hilda Melville, do you know you're cheating? Last night, when I was on my way to Robert Hardy's private estate, I was stopped by that bastard Bergman. Otherwise I would have rushed in and beaten him. I slapped Mick Hardy hard in anger. Mick Hardy, what are you crazy about? Even if I do have something to do with Robert Hardy, it's not your turn. Mick Hardy wiped the blood from the corner of his lower lip with his hand and sneered. Hilda Melville, you are my marriage partner. My uncle doesn't dare to do anything to you. I just expected this. I deliberately lost you to him. The outside world says that he is not close to women, and I just want to send a woman to disgust him. I didn't speak. He frowned, and his tone lowered. I didn't think he would be interested in you, but after knowing that he took you to his private estate, I was in my heart panicked. Last night I couldn't sleep with insomnia, and I kept feeling remorseful in my heart, so I could only drink to kill my sorrows. Hilda Melville, I don't care what happened to you with Robert Hardy last night, and you are not allowed to have any contact with him in the future. System, he's more sinister than you think, and you can't play him. There's a family dinner at Robert Hardy's house tomorrow night. Let's go together, and I'm going to let my relatives know that you're my Mick Hardy's fiancé. I seriously doubt that Mick Hardy's head is caught in the door. He was the one who pushed me out yesterday, and now he is the one who wants me back. I'm not going. You can leave quickly. Don't disturb my class. When I refused, Mick Hardy pursed his lower lip and said nothing, looking at his back as he left. I really wondered if I was sick with something. I would think that he married me because he really liked me. At 7 o'clock the next evening, I went to the family dinner at Robert Hardy's house. As soon as I entered the scene, I saw Mick Hardy. He wore a well-cut suit, and Kelly Hodgson, in a long pink dress, held him intimately. The two looked like the most compatible couple. Maybe I saw Mick Hardy holding Kelly Hodgson in public. The Robert Hardy relatives who looked down on me all stood up at once. It's a family dinner, and Mick Hardy is holding hands with other women in public, which is enough to show that he doesn't want to marry Hilda Melville. In the past 6 months of marriage, Mick Hardy has been playing so much outside, and Hilda Melville has never complained. Why else? It must be for Robert Hardy's money. It's really cheap. No, Mick Hardy doesn't want her at all. Kelly Hodgson let go of Mick Hardy and walked over the crowd to me. The corners of his lips hooked up a provocative smile. Hilda Melville, why did you come to Robert Hardy's house? You've cancelled your marriage to Mick Hardy. No one invited you. You're uninvited. Aren't you afraid of making people laugh? Or did you hook up with his uncle last night? Kelly Hodgson's voice was loud, and the people around me smelled the big melon, and quickly looked at me. Hilda Melville is my fiancée, and she's more qualified than anyone else to stand here. However, at this moment, Robert Hardy's low, cold voice sounded on the spiral staircase. He stepped down, took me into his arms, and glanced blankly at Kelly Hodgson. It's you. Did Mick Hardy give you a name? Today is a family feast, and those who have nothing to do with it are invited to leave consciously. Kelly Hodgson blushed with anger and had a thick neck, but she didn't dare to speak. As soon as Robert Hardy said this, everyone in the scene showed shocked expressions except for me. I am not here for a dinner at Robert Hardy's house today. Not at the invitation of Mick Hardy. It's Robert Hardy. Yesterday he called me and asked me to come to the family dinner. Gossip about wealthy families has always been a hot topic, and all the people in the dinner hall poured up. A boy in a white suit smiled and asked Robert Hardy, "Brother Robert Hardy, is what you just said true? Is this beautiful sister my cousin?" Robert Hardy's thin lips curled slightly. "Of course it's true. I was expecting an official announcement in 2 days. But I can't wait." Someone else asked, "Robert Hardy, did you rush back to China just to marry Hilda Melville?" Honestly, I also want to know the answer. What is it that Robert Hardy suddenly returned to? I saw him nod slightly. Mick Hardy's mom instantly blackfaced. "Robert Hardy, what's the matter with you? I don't like Hilda Melville. But anyway, she's married to my Mick Hardy, so isn't it just a knife to intervene when you are an uncle? What kind of knife snatches love?" Robert Hardy had a faint smile on his face, but his tone was gloomy. "Sister-in-law, what did your son do excessively? I think it's better for you to ask him in person rather than to question. Also, don't mess with the generations. Hilda Melville's grandfather and my grandfather are brothers, and it's not appropriate for Hilda Melville to marry him." Now it's quiet again. Robert Hardy's status was there, and even if they had any ideas in their hearts, they didn't dare to bring them up in person. Mick Hardy's father, Theobald Hardy, stopped talking. I know a little bit about him. In the early years, I saw reports that he was brought back from the orphanage by Robert Hardy's father. That's why he's the eldest in the family. But Robert Hardy's family is headed by Robert Hardy. Mick Hardy's face tensed, and he threw the wine glass in his hand to the ground in anger. "Just turn around and leave." Kelly Hodgson glared at me hatefully and hurried after me. The family banquet was dissolved. The next day, the marriage of the two families was on the hot search. Pound our Robert Hardy, the ruler of the Robert Hardy family, and Hilda Melville, the eldest lady of the Melville family, married and then loved, or love at first sight. Explosion, pound pound. Mick Hardy smashed the cup in public. Explosion, pound pound. Is Robert Hardy always taking it by force? The whole network is in an uproar. Some netizens bless me, and some netizens bombarded my Weibo. "Hilda Melville, what are you pretending? It's disgusting to let Mick Hardy can't get off the stage in public, but he seduces his uncle behind his back. Did the Buddha in the Beijing circle voluntarily go down to the altar for love?" According to the grapevine, every time Hilda Melville attends a party, Robert Hardy's eyes never come down from her. Could it be he has long liked her? At noon, Robert Hardy took me to dinner. As soon as the first course was served, my best friend Tabitha Eddy called, "Hilda Melville, you're married to Robert Hardy." If I didn't see the domestic news, I wouldn't know. "Why didn't you tell me? And my brother won't tell me. I hate you." "Tabitha Eddy, I'm too busy to tell you. It happened a little suddenly. I haven't had time to tell anyone but my parents." "Okay, I forgive you. I said a long time ago, you and Mick Hardy are really not suitable. He is not worthy of you, obviously married, and he has to go out to raise canaries. I really don't know how his parents educated him. But how did you suddenly marry Robert Hardy? Didn't you say he looked fierce and hard to get along with? Don't you tell me that you can't help falling in love with him during the time I'm traveling abroad." I looked stunned. "No, Robert Hardy and I don't know each other well, so maybe he just needs a match." I heard my brother say, "Weren't you drunk 2 days ago? Or what happened that night on Robert Hardy's private estate?" Tabitha Eddy's question made me a little hot. In front of Robert Hardy, I didn't say much, so I had to hang up the phone first and contact her later. Just hung up the phone. Robert Hardy's hand cutting the steak paused slightly, and asked me with a smile, "Hilda Melville, do you mean unfamiliar under the bed?" Good fellow, I'm being asked again to be silent. After eating, Robert Hardy sent me home. Throughout the afternoon, Mick Hardy called me a lot, not his own cell phone, all unknown numbers. There are also nearly hundreds of confessional text messages. I simply turned off my phone. In the evening, I went out for a walk and saw Mick Hardy, sitting at the entrance of the neighborhood with a few empty wine bottles scattered on the floor. Afraid of being entangled by him, I turned around and prepared to leave. But as soon as I turned around, I heard him call my name. Mick Hardy ran over and forcibly hugged me. Hilda Melville, I'm really sorry yesterday. I heard you say you didn't go to the family dinner, so I invited Kelly Hodgson. Let go, or I'll warn you about sexual harassment. Mick Hardy was slightly stunned, as if he didn't expect me to become so cold. He let go of me and took a diamond ring from his bag with trembling hands. Hilda Melville, this is the wedding ring I designed for you personally. I know you still like me, and we're okay with each other. I was calculated by Robert Hardy. I was so confused that day. I fell for him. He said that there is a billion project, and he wants to play a game with me, and the rule is that if I win, he will give me the project, and if I lose, I have to find a woman who can play the piano, and he will name you. I want to embarrass him, so I'll let you go, because the person you like is me, and it's my fiancé. He doesn't dare to really touch you. But then everything happened completely out of my control. I didn't know that I would be so jealous that I went crazy. Seeing him standing with you, others said that you were talented and beautiful. I was uncomfortable to death. Obviously the person who married you was me. I know, I can't complain about anyone. I didn't take this opportunity and lost you, who should have belonged to me. Mick Hardy's words made my chest feel choked. I took a deep breath, then looked at him calmly, and said word by word, Mick Hardy, the prodigal son is worthless in my eyes. I was serious about choosing to marry you. You always knew it, but I still fooled around with the women outside after the marriage, which made me lose face. Whether you really wanted to push me to Robert Hardy, or if he calculated me, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Mick Hardy was stuck in his throat, a little desperate, as if he was afraid that I would go. He suddenly knelt down and pleaded, Hilda Melville, do you want to marry Robert Hardy so much? Are you really not willing to give me another chance? I'm afraid no one would believe that the arrogant young master of the Robert Hardy family would kneel down in front of me. Yes, after sleeping with your uncle, I don't want to marry you. I smiled softly, and Mick Hardy looked like it was about to shatter. I turned around, and something seemed to be blown away by the wind. I know what kind of person Mick Hardy is, and he likes me to follow him obediently. After actually being together, he got tired of it. I was so confused by the girls outside that I completely forgot about my appointment. The Mick Hardy who said he wanted to protect me is long gone. When I got home, I called for surveillance and found Mick Hardy, standing up and leaving, half an hour later, looking at his lonely back as he drifted away. My heart was unexpectedly calm. I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, so I cleaned up my house, packed up all his stuff and threw it in the trash. I thought the dust had settled on this matter, but I didn't expect Kelly Hodgson to smear me on Weibo. Because some people say that she is a junior, it ruins my relationship with Mick Hardy. So she framed me and said that I had always wanted to marry Robert Hardy. So she used Mick Hardy to seduce him. Her Weibo was quickly rushed to the hot search. The comment section scrolled fast. I'll just say, Mick Hardy has had so many girlfriends. Hilda Melville would go to marry him. I didn't expect it to be for the person in charge of Robert Hardy's family. This is too much. It's not like this if you want to be on top. Mick Hardy was used. So pitiful. Who would hug him who was broken? Kelly Hodgson, don't think about whitewashing. You only hooked up with him after Mick Hardy and Hilda Melville got married. Why is it Hilda Melville's fault? At the end of the day, neither of you is a good thing. I don't have a grudge against Kelly Hodgson. I also pretended not to see what happened to her and Mick Hardy. Since she wants to fight me, then I'm not a vegetarian either. I threw out a high-definition video of her deliberately hooking up with Mick Hardy at a party when she was a model. Before the party started, she took the money to buy off the waiter. After the party began, the waiter bumped into her with a drink. Coincidentally, she fell into Mick Hardy's arms. As soon as Kelly Hodgson's dress got wet with red wine, Mick Hardy took her to the locker room. Soon, public opinion reversed again. What's the matter? This Kelly Hodgson is a little too good. Isn't this plot what the female supporting actress in the TV series did in order to attract the attention of the male protagonist? Laughing to death. What about Hilda Melville? Hilda Melville is at least the eldest lady of the Melville family, and she has known Robert Hardy since she was a child, and it is too ugly to talk about seducing, or something. Upstairs. Ordered. What's the point? Is there no problem with Hilda Melville? I don't have the ability. Who is to blame? It's only Mick Hardy who doesn't like her. Yes. What's wrong with Kelly Hodgson? She just wants to fall in love with a handsome and golden man. After reading Weibo for a while, I withdrew. I don't need to do anything. If the public opinion is unfavorable to me, Robert Hardy will always let the public relations team deal with it as soon as possible. After my best friend Tabitha Eddy returned home, we went shopping together. When she talked about Robert Hardy, she looked indignant. Hilda Melville, Robert Hardy. This Buddha in the Beijing circle is not at all what I imagined. You said that he is very gentle and considerate. How can you see it usually? I suspect that he has double standards. Then, she couldn't help but laugh again. My brother complained to me that he was sexually despised by friends. And since you got married, Robert Hardy hasn't drunk with his brothers. Chin. Hilda Melville. I have a guess if Robert Hardy has liked you for a long time. When I heard this, I was stunned. Robert Hardy, does he like me? It shouldn't be possible. Robert Hardy was 5 years older than me, and I didn't have much contact with him growing up. Occasionally, it's just a simple hello or a meal together. I don't stay together as often as I do with Mick Hardy. Half a year after we got married, Robert Hardy and I decided to get married. It's not that it's about getting married. It's me, and I just want to marry him. On the day of the wedding, it was very busy, but it went well. That night, it rained heavily. It wasn't until noon the next day that I heard about Robert Hardy and I in the middle of our wedding. Mick Hardy went to rob the marriage. Failed. Stopped outside the auditorium by Bergmond. Robert Hardy's grandfather was angry, and punished him for kneeling in front of the ancestral hall of Robert Hardy's family all night. He was then sent to Country Tea to manage the Robert Hardy branch. I was surprised to hear the news. I didn't think Mick Hardy would come and steal the marriage. Is he crazy? It's such a crazy thing to do. Not long after, Robert Hardy's family hosted another family dinner. This time, there were not as many people as before. After eating and drinking, I felt a little sleepy, so I went back to the bedroom first. As I passed by the study, I accidentally glanced at it, and noticed that a book had fallen to the floor. So I went in and picked up the book. But to my surprise, this is not a book. Rather, it is a diary disguised in a bookcase. I didn't want to open it, but when I saw the words, "She finally became my wife," written on the cover, I was instantly intrigued. I remembered all the speculations I had with Tabitha Eddy, and finally opened my journal. The first page of the diary. The first time I met Hilda Melville was on a rainy day. Melville's family just moved to the capital from City A. The old man of the Melville family came to the door for the first time, with his 13-year-old granddaughter. I was in the study reviewing my homework when my grandfather asked Mick Hardy to take Hilda Melville to the yard to play. The laughter of the two of them caught me. On a normal day, it is impossible for this scene to occur at Robert Hardy's house. Maybe it's because the homework is too boring. I stood on the balcony and watched for a while. Grandpa asked me to take care of Hilda Melville more. Because of the relationship between the two families, I also regard her as a sister. But Hilda Melville seems to be afraid of me. Every time she sees me, she hides far away, and only when Mick Hardy shows up does she smile. Yes, they are their peers. Tyler Megg is my best brother, and his sister Tabitha Eddy is a classmate of Hilda Melville. The two quickly became close friends. Hilda Melville is pure and clean. The last time I noticed her was at her 17th birthday party. She was wearing a light blue dress and stood in the crowd like a dazzling rising star. At the end of the party, Mick Hardy gave her a bouquet of flowers. She responds with a hug. They must have a good impression of each other. At that moment, I stopped trying to get closer to her. After I went abroad, I kept an eye on the news of Hilda Melville all the time. It's just that every time it's not very good news. Mick Hardy has sex raw. I don't know how much she has been wronged by the well-behaved and obedient her, but I know who I am. And I can't even comfort me. Something happened to Melville's company, and I could have provided the funds directly, but Mick Hardy preempted me, and proposed marriage to Hilda Melville. Knowing that Hilda Melville likes him, I can't do anything but bless. But it's also a pity. When the two families got married, they decided to get married after graduation. After learning that Mick Hardy was outsourcing to raise women, I rushed back before they graduated. I did calculate Mick Hardy, but the love for Hilda Melville is far more than the billion in that bet. I like her, not because she's the eldest lady of the Melville family. It's not because of the agreement of the grandparents. Because she's Hilda Melville. In the days of secret fascination, every time I looked up at the stars, my mind was the figure of her wearing a long blue dress, when she was 17 years old. There are still many memories about her, in the long river of years. It has turned into a good medicine, healing me all the time. 2 months after we got married, Hilda Melville always said that we were married first and then loved. She doesn't know. I have had a crush on her for many years. After closing Robert Hardy's journal, I went downstairs. When he was found, he was talking to the elders of the family in the courtyard. When he saw me, he immediately put down his glass, nodded at the man, and turned to walk over to me. Hilda Melville, why did you go downstairs again? Aren't you sleepy? Robert Hardy pulled me into his arms. In winter, he was always afraid that I would be frozen. I hugged him tightly, bit my lip, hesitated for a while and decided to confess. Robert Hardy, there's a book in the study that fell to the floor. I accidentally saw your diary. Sorry. Robert Hardy lowered his eyes and chuckled. Maybe the book doesn't want to keep my secrets anymore. It wants you to know my mind. After spending a while in the yard, we went back to the bedroom. As soon as I walked in, Robert Hardy carried me to the bed, his thin lips hooked into a smile. Wife, sleep. When I woke up the next day, I saw that Robert Hardy's diary had been updated. Hilda Melville's love after marriage is what I have been planning for a long time. After getting married, all the soreness and bitterness of the crush turned into sweet